Hello and welcome to Old Fashioned Catholics. I'm Kevin,
I'm Nick.
and we are two Catholics who like drinking old fashions. See, hence the name.
Yeah, it's witty what we did there.
If you'd like to join us for tonight's episode with a drink, we'll give you a chance to pause it and we'll share with you what we are drinking up on the screen. Feel free to grab a non alcoholic beverage if you wish. Please drink responsibly. We're here just sharing a drink. Pause it now.
It's good.
Well, what was tickling your fancy tonight, Nick? What did you
Well,
decide to mix?
I'm going to be honest. So, lately I've been really into just vodka on ice.
What?
Yeah, just vodka on ice. Maybe with like a just a
Sounds like something a drunk man in the very, very cold regions
it's a
drinks.
Minnesota thing. It's where we are. No, I don't know. I've been really liking. So I was going to do that tonight. I was going to be outside the box, and then it came to time for the show, and I couldn't do it. So I made it old fashioned. But I did 6 dashes of bitters. I have 2 ounces of from Ralph Frederick. My stepdad gave me Woodford Reserve. 6 dashes of bitters, 3 cherries, and then an ounce of simple syrup in each one. And then, to be crazy, I cut a slice of an orange. I rubbed it around the top of the rim. So there you go.
Did that do anything?
Yeah, it tastes like orange.
Oh, nice.
How about you? What are you drinking?
Well, I put some rye whiskey in this time. So I have rye. I have both regular and orange bitters because I didn't want to take this was the lazy man's route. I didn't want to take the time to muddle an orange and a cherry. So I just grabbed some orange bitters to get a little bit of orange flavor. And I didn't have any syrup. So I made a super noob mistake and put in some honey, but then I put the ice in. So the honey's
Oh, yeah.
just
It's just
stuck
like a clump on
to
the
the
bottom.
bottom. There's no honey flavor in here whatsoever. I'm gonna get to the bottom and
It's a garnish. It's a
gotta
garnish now. That's all it
lick
is.
out the honey.
That's awesome.
Yep. Oh, Big Bear. He loves the honey.
That's
So that's what
awesome.
I'm drinking.
Okay, cool.
But
Yeah,
how was your day? Oh, go ahead. What was you gonna say?
oh no, I was gonna say I've done the Northwoods a few times, but not tonight. Yeah, I
Oh,
really
it's my
like that.
favorite.
It's
It's
so
my
good, man.
favorite. The maple syrup. Ooh,
Changed my life.
ooh,
Changed
I
my
love
life.
that sweetness.
It's
So
good.
truly, sir, it's 10:55 at night. In true to form, we are recording very late, and I'm curious how your day was.
My day was interesting. We we are apparently moving into a new phase in our life. Well, so Kevin, you know this. People at home wouldn't. Some of you guys know, but we're missionaries. Like that's just what we've. It's what we are, and we're stateside because that is the path God has taken us on. But everything we've done since almost the beginning of our marriage has been with that in mind. And so we've been in International Falls for 2 years, and we thought we'd stay here for a couple of years more, like 2 to 4 years. And they knew that going in, and that was kind of the thing. And with the goal of trying to take care of our student loan debt, the massive mountain of student loan debt. Jason doesn't even like me to say the amount. I like to say it because it's such a big amount. It's $500,000 of student loan debt, which I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, yeah, that's normal for med school. I was like, I didn't think that was normal, but we thought for some reason that we'd be able to pay it off quickly with her job, and that's impossible. It's like a 30-year payment plan or whatever. So we've been wondering recently, or like starting maybe like 6 months ago, like what are we doing? Like, God, we started to get really like restless. Well, in the last 2 weeks, we kind of realized that due to COVID, patient attendance has dropped off to where her paycheck is 1/3 of what it was for the last 2 years. She was on contract the whole time, and now it's on. And we're not the only people affected by COVID, obviously. And during the worst of COVID, we were fine, but now the contract is up, and so we've been looking like, wow, we can't afford the mortgage payment. What do you do then? And at first, there was like that moment of panic where you're like they don't have debtors prisons, so that's cool, but what are we gonna do? but then it faded quickly enough where we're like, oh, this might actually be God sort of giving us the boot, like just being like, and go, like that sort of thing, which we didn't see coming. Nobody saw any of this coming. So today was, I woke up in the morning and I had to contact our mortgage company and our car payment company and student loan companies and just be like, hey, COVID finally hit us. And so it was it looked to be a stressful day, but it ended up being oddly just a really, for me anyway, a really peace-filled day. It some stuff turned out really well. I want to put a shout out to Ally Bank, or not Ally, Mr. Cooper Bank. I don't know, they hold mortgages, but they are like 100% accommodating when it comes to you being in a bind with COVID. Like they aren't making a money grab that I can see. And I read all the fine print. And so, yeah, it started to be a stressful day, and it was a good day. I'm really tired, but I actually considered being like, I don't know if we should film tonight. I'm super exhausted because, and Kevin, like anybody who knows me, like that's where we diverge actually. Like you're in your job, you need detail orientation. You're really good at like details, and I that's where we're different. If I have a couple details to take care of, I'm stressed about it in the morning because I'm too scatterbrained. I can't remember things. And so I thought today would be really bad. It turned out good, but I had so many details that I'm just kind of exhausted. So because Jason was like, are you going to film with your face looking like you do? Like you're going to get to nap first? And I was like, no. So this is what it is. Anyway,
Nick,
long
I need a
answer.
little bit less of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you like maybe do it tomorrow and sleep tonight? And so, yeah,
Just
so that's,
pointing to all of me.
yes, that's right. What is that?
I don't remember, from some movie.
He's pointing to all of you. What? Yeah, that's from something.
A little bit less of this. You just pointed at all of me.
Okay, hold on. You just.
It's a movie that I'm pretty sure I like.
Yeah, here it is. You just pointed to all of me. It is, and the people at home knew, it is How to Train Your Dragon. That's one of your favorite
One of
movies.
my favorite movies of all time. It is one of the best movies of all time.
It is. I saw that movie because of you. You saw it and you were like a kid in a candy store. You were like, you have to see this movie. And you were right. It's amazing.
So good. It's so good. And the second one is so great too. The third one is kind of a fail, kind of like the third season of Stranger Things.
Yeah. Oof.
But man, How to
Yeah.
Train Your Dragon. Yeah,
Those
you just
first two were
pointed to
amazing.
all of me. Hiccup.
That's
So
what it is.
yeah, you do. You look like shit. And
Thank you. You look really good. Your hair looks really good, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I'm just gonna keep doing this more and more until it's all sticking up tonight.
It looks really good.
I just make it worse and worse.
You have a wave.
It's a little bit of a wave, an old man wave.
Yeah. How was your day though? Like you had a long day, I suppose.
I had a really long day. I'm tired. It was a long day, and it was a good day, but it was just really exhausting. So as soon as my duties were done at one thing, came home, quick ate, and just had to clean. It was just time. And are you ever faced with that decision if you look at your kitchen counters and you go, I could just leave this until tomorrow and it will make the whole morning worse and everyone will suffer because of it, but I just want to leave it. And then you have to decide. Do you ever wrestle with that?
Yeah. What did you do tonight? Did you leave it?
No, tonight I cleaned it.
Beautiful.
But I did, there's a corner here where there's these boxes that I flattened that have to go out really far to the recycling, and it's like I'm avoiding those. Like I'm like, I'll do those tomorrow. Like it's the one thing that's like holding on to the one thing I don't want to do.
Boxes. There's a TikTok about that. Somebody was saying like you in adulthood, you never knew that you would have that conversation. You'd be like, that's a pretty good box. I think I'm gonna I don't want to take that. I'm gonna keep that. And like you flatten them and they stay in a corner. It's so great that you would say that because they stay there for months. You're like, no, I don't. I could use that box. It's a good box.
It's a really good box.
Really good box.
But
no, go ahead. Go.
Well, you go and then I'm gonna run and get something.
Oh no, I have a 15-year-old, and so the days that I don't clean the counter, my 15-year-old has to clean the counter. So it builds character. Go ahead. You have to go get something.
So the other night, I have been just recently when when I think of it, I just try to look up various recipes and things to do with food. So the other night I was looking at, man, I want to I want more pickled things. So
So you left.
So I found out that making pickled onions is insanely easy. This took
Really?
like 10 minutes to make, and they're so good. So I got home really late tonight, and there was a burger waiting for me. And I toasted the bun on the pan with butter and threw a bunch of these pickled onions on it with mayo and just scarfed.
How long do they have to stay pickled?
Um, I made this and put it in the fridge last night and
Oh,
started eating them today.
oh, that's not bad.
And they'll be good for several weeks, maybe longer.
I did a bunch of stuff with this group called Shalom Media. Have you heard of them?
I've heard of them. Are they
So
Catholic?
they're Catholic. They're amazing. They're mainly oriented towards like the Indian population, like from India. They're huge in India, but they're huge in the States. But I did a bunch of stuff with them, and so when you're with them, you get to eat real Indian food, and they have this stuff. It's pickled mango. It's called achar, and
Oh
you
my
can
god,
you can buy it in like jars or whatever. But I mean, it's
achar.
hot, fiery, pickled. Like it's just and like a lot of the Indian kids were like, we don't even eat this stuff. We want pizza. And I'm like, this is the greatest, and it's explosive diarrhea later because it burns just all the way
Mhm,
through you, but it's
mhm.
worth it. It's worth it. They would give me just huge amounts. They knew I loved it. A
Oh my
char.
god.
So I've wanted to make a char, but it's not as easy as the onions.
I couldn't believe how easy it was. And now I'm gonna make pickled hard-boiled eggs next because they
You
look so good.
you should put the links to the recipe
To
to
that?
pickled onions
Yeah, I'll try.
down underneath.
Oh yeah, it was a YouTube video. I'll just
Yeah.
link the YouTube video for these exact.
YouTube is great.
Ah, so much learning to be done. So you guys have been really just thrust into a mode of having to rely on divine providence again. It's been, I
Yeah.
mean, your whole story is peppered with that. And you mentioned that from long ago. I mean, that started for you guys very, very early on when you went to China. And I remember several stories you've recounted to me of needing to rely on God's providence. I know you've given entire talks on God's providence. So now,
Yeah.
once again in your
Again.
life, you're having to practice what you've preached.
Yeah, it's weird. When Jason said it the other day, we didn't realize it was happening, but there was some mentality we got into thinking like, well, she's a freaking doctor. She went to school for 12 years. She's a doctor. There's you make good money being a doctor. And so this is it. I think Jason even said this like, well, no, my paycheck will allow us to pay off the debt and then we'll go and we'll rely on what I get paid as a doctor and somehow in there like that just became like the next step for us. Whereas prior to that moment, yeah, everywhere we've lived in the world, we've had zero in the bank and we've had to rely on Providence. And it was always our thing. And yeah, given whole talks on it, there's talks on the YouTube channel about that. But somewhere like just without knowing it happened, we're like, yeah, but this is how God's going to do this. Like we'll be able to do it. And then, like you said, like immediately, like, no, actually, your doctor's salary is nothing. Like it's you make what a youth minister makes now type thing. Like it just all that work and you're like, oh, not that the work was in vain, but it seems like God is to like, well, you did all that work for a reason, but it wasn't to pay. Like it wasn't for the money. And it was weird because it came faster than we thought it would. We knew, of course, on the mission field, we're going to have to, with the rest of our life, rely on God. But it just didn't seem like it would happen so fast that we would have to do that. So, which sounds cold, but
Well, you should let me pick your brain a little bit because it might be good for you to recall all those times where it can help you right now to remember that God has stepped in. I know it's so easy in the present moment to forget the good things that have happened in the past when something
yeah,
isn't good right now. But I mean, going way, way back, your very first mission field was China, and I know sometime in Cambodia.
yeah,
But, you know, what was it like? Or do you remember anything specific from that time of needing to
yeah.
rely on God's providence and Him showing up?
That's funny. So we got married in 2001, and Jason, on our first date, she made it very clear she has known since she was 10 years old she's going to be a missionary. And so I was like, me too, because I liked her. And so then I always say I've known since I met her that I was going to be a missionary. So we got married, and a month after we got married, she's like, I want to take this trip to China with the psych department from the Bible school we went to. And so she went, and before the first phone call, the first phone call we had, she was like, I feel like I'm at home, like just being on the field. I feel like this is it. She was gone 12 days. And before she got back, I had already filled out paperwork with the Assemblies of God to try to, become missionaries. So we moved to Florida near her parents in 2003 with the knowledge that as soon as the money was raised, we could move overseas. And so we were moving to China. You can't be a missionary in China, and that's fine. That's fine. So we weren't missionaries. We just were going to be teachers. We got to travel in and work in an international school, and kind of like be Christian type thing, and because it's illegal to be a missionary there. So we're like, China's where we're going. Let's start fundraising. And we were super excited. And that was in 2003. And we did some church work and like traveled in Florida and spoke at churches. And I kid you not, for a year, nothing, not a dime. Like we weren't, no money. And it was inexplicable because we were like, but we are talking to people about it and nobody's giving. It was just weirdest thing. So I worked at a Boys and Girls Club in Florida. And there was a girl that worked with me there, and she was an atheist, and I was pretty just like candid about we're gonna be missionaries, and we're going overseas. And she kind of took some joy in once in a while, every couple of weeks, just checking in with me, being like, how's the fundraising going? And I'd be like, craziest thing, not a dime. Not a dime. The only income we have right now is me working at this Boys and Girls Club. And it kind of grew, and for like a year there was nothing. And she would, at one point she said, Nick, did it ever occur to you that maybe there's not like somebody upstairs wanting you to go? I mean, does that cross your mind? Maybe because nothing's happening. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit. I mean, not in any deep sense, because I just know that we're supposed to. Like, it's that part's not unclear. It's just how. And then after a year, and I don't remember dates on anything. This was so long ago, but I walked up to our mailbox one day and opened it, and there were like a couple checks in there, and they were from people I don't know them. I don't know where they came from, but there were just checks in the mailbox, and they were in the memo like for your missionary work or whatever. And so that was cool. And I wish there's no smartphones back then. There was nothing like that. I wish we could have documented everything, because in a 2-week period, every single day I would go to the mailbox, there would be checks upon checks in the mailbox. There was, in a 2-week period, we got over 10 grand in the bank. And like, I would like just trot into the mailbox, so excited to go out every day. And I was just waiting for this girl to ask me at work. And I waited for the moment when she asked. And at some point she asked me like, how's the fundraising going? And I was like, it's funny you should ask. And I told her, in the last 2 weeks, over 10 grand has come in, and we needed 10 grand in cash to go. And she went, oh, maybe there's someone upstairs who wants you to go to China. And I was like, boom, like just so like, and it was weird to watch like a conversion happen like in front of my face. And so she started going to church because of that, because of us just going like, I don't know, but it's going to be okay. And she was a big part of it. She gave, and this is the weirdest thing, and I don't know if she's watching right now, I won't say her name or whatever. She gave me the first rosary I ever saw. And I had no desire to have a rosary, but she had this weird conversion where she started going to the Baptist church in town. And at one point she came into the Boys and Girls Club, and she had this old wooden rosary. And she's like, this was my grandma's. She passed away. I don't want it. For some reason, I thought I'd give it to you. And I took it with me to China, and we would sit in these Chinese church services. And I didn't pray the rosary. I had no clue what the rosary was. Google was just brand new, so you couldn't Google things. And we would sit in these 2-hour services in Chinese. I had a sheet of 50 names. And so I would hold on to a bead, and I would pray for that name. and then moved to a bead and prayed with that name just because we couldn't understand what was going on. And this girl, all because of that first, which again, we've talked about miracles, like not that that was a miracle because people started responding or whatever, but in a real sense, it just seemed like that was the first moment we had to be like, oh wow, this is how God does it. It was like a little trust jump, like off of at Leicester River, like one of the lower rocks you would jump off into the water. It would be like that. So long answer, but that was the first time I think in our marriage we were like, okay, so it just, you have to like take a step, and then it takes a while, and at the last minute he does everything. So yeah.
Man, that's so awesome. I didn't know about that part with the girl and going to church.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part of the story at all.
Yeah, and I know we've kept kind of in touch. I'm not sure if she's still in church or not, but even that, just the fact that she darkened the doors of a church because, and she even told me, she at one point she's like, well, there has to be a God because I know you're an idiot, and I know that you can't orchestrate. I'm like, yes, that's what I want. I want it to be clear that I'm stupid, but somehow there he is type thing. So yeah,
So
it was really cool.
was she not only foreshadowing your entry into the Catholic Church with the Rosary, but also the impetus for the name Nick the Idiot?
You know, that's so funny. I never thought of that until just now. When I said it, I should get in touch with her. I got to write it down.
I know, because then something happened awesome while you were in China when you were at your time in Cambodia.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, I, it's always been these moments where, like, not that we're bumbling along, we're trying to do the smartest thing we can in life. But, Jacelyn knew since she was 10. So then we moved to China. But we moved to China, we were just teachers, not just, but we were teachers. And there wasn't really a career goal. I was going to come back to the States and become a pastor, and that would be it. Like, and then we'd go back overseas as missionaries full term. We just didn't know where or what or whatever. And to be honest, Jacelyn didn't have at that time a really set thing. She went to school for psychology, but there wasn't, that hadn't solidified yet. And we were close to Cambodia over there, and so when on vacation we went into Thailand, and then took a bus trip over to Cambodia. And we were in Cambodia at the killing fields. The Khmer Rouge, they killed over 2 million of their own citizens in the Khmer Rouge. And we were at the killing fields where they buried most of the bodies. These deep wells in the ground, these holes in the ground where they just murdered, and it was horrific. And we had walked around the school that they had turned into a prison, and we're walking around it's just the weirdest thing. We're walking around at the killing fields, and there's kids, beggar kids everywhere. And so these kids had run up, and one of them was limping. He had a cut in his heel. And Jason was like, oh, well, we have a first aid kit, like just one of those small ones in the backpack. So we knelt down, and she like cleaned it off and then put a Band-Aid on it, or a gauze thing or whatever. And the kid got up and left. And it was the weirdest thing. So Jason, she said, and so the process took this long. She said, it'd be so crazy it'd be so nice if somebody would come and, take care of them. And, somebody could become a doctor and come and take care of them. I'm going to become a doctor. And it was that fast. Like it, and I was going like, okay. And she's like, no, wait. I'm going to become a doctor. And it was like, and then she did. And then nothing veered her from that since that moment. Like in this little, just a Band-Aid on a kid. I mean, you could think like, I was disillusioned and I think I was a little off and whatever. Like nothing has deterred her the whole time. She has
Because
like,
then she just said it, and
yeah,
then you guys came to Duluth and then did it.
she came, like we came back to the States knowing just the next step. Like they always, preachers will always talk about how like God said, like, my word is a lamp unto your feet and a light unto my path, or whatever, that it just lights the next step. And that's what it was. We knew, okay, come back to the States. And she has to do pre-med. So we're like, well, we know, I'm from Duluth. We know people in Duluth. I could maybe get a job as a youth pastor or something. We'll go back to Duluth. And she signed up at St. Scholastica. And even that though, like ended up being providential, because we came back not knowing. I started flight school to become a pilot. Some of the greatest people like that I admired in our denomination, were missionary pilots, and thought, okay, I'll become a pilot. Maybe that can be useful overseas. And so I went to flight school, and Jason started pre-med, and we got to Duluth on like January 7th, I think she started, of 2007. And we were total side note, we were like really kind of unsettled in our faith life, in our denomination, trying to figure out, like, just really struggling with stuff. Anyways, we thought, well, we were supplementing. We went to different churches, different kinds of denominations, went to a Greek Orthodox church, and we thought we would try a mass. And so we had never really been to a mass. Like, I think Jason had, but we walked in and it was January 30th, 2007, went to our first mass ever. And I mean, long story short, then boom, I got hired as a youth minister and became Catholic in 08. And all that happened because the Killing Fields called us, God called her to medical school or pre-med first. And yeah, just crazy. And that's rambling.
I
But
mean,
anyway.
you mentioning going to flight school is really significant to me because of what happened to the two of you one day at your church in regards to, like, making the decision to become Catholic. And I've never forgotten that.
It's funny. I can't believe you remember that. Yeah.
I never forgot it. It just blew me away.
This is all me talking. So we'll just do an episode, I guess, where then I ask you questions, because apparently that's how it's going. I feel
But this is
self-conscious.
good.
At our church in Duluth, it was a Wednesday night, and I was already a Catholic youth minister. So I was over at St. Ben's, like, doing youth group, and Jason was at the River Church that we went to. And it was like a Wednesday night prayer service. And so it was just, they played praise and worship, and the lights were kind of down and you could just pray. And we were considering, like, we had found so much truth and so much power in the church. And it was like changing us, even though we weren't Catholic, it was just transforming us. And Jason was really like grieving, like, because it looked to our family like it was a leaving behind of what we had grown up in. And she knew it would cause a lot of pain and a rift. So she was at church, kneeling there or sitting in the pew, just crying, just praying, like, God, I need to know that this is what you want us to do. I feel like I want to become Catholic, but I need to know that it's what you want for us. And there was this guy in the church, and I'm not sure if he's still there, but he was just known. He would hear from God. Like, pastors of other denominations would come to him and just say, hey, will you pray about this? And can some guidance? And he happened to be standing in the back of the church, and he was, standing there. And so then at one point he just walked over to Jason and sat down in the pew, and she's there crying. And he says, hey, can I sit down a sec? And she's like, sure. And he said, I don't know what this means, and I just feel like I'm supposed to tell you this. I was standing back there, and God gave me this image. When fighter jets are fighting in battle, and the one jet kind of like locks on to the jet in front of him. And Jason said, yeah. He said, well, whatever it is you're praying about, you have locked on to the truth, and you need to go with it. And Jason was like, like, just crying, just and it's so crazy, because if that guy had known what he was encouraging her to do, then he wouldn't have done it. You know what I mean? Like, because they wouldn't have advocated becoming Catholic. But A, that guy just let God speak to him, and B, like, God just spoke so clearly to Jason. Again, like, we were kind of up in the air, like, oh, what do we do? What's going on? Like, where are we even going in life? And then he speaks right to the situation through that. So yeah, that was that. It's funny you remember that. I forgot all about that.
I'll never forget it. I mean, I'll never forget that, because I mean, one of it did what it did to me right there is what it did to me that first time when you told me that story, and I just go, that guy had no idea what he was telling you guys. He
Yeah.
had no idea what she was praying about, and had no idea that you're in flight school.
Yeah.
And
Right.
by the way, one of the most beautiful memories of my life, I'm reminded of over this last week, because every night has been butt ass cold.
Yeah.
And on a night like this, you invited me to the hangar because you had to get flight hours in, and it was late at night like this. And I met you really late at night, and it was really cold. And we went up in your plane, and the moon was just shining on the lake. And it was so cold that the plane it was like it was floating in water. Oh, it's a weird description, but like the plane just cut through the air. There was like no turbulence at all, and we're just flying, and there's the moon, and it's loud, and it's really cold, and I mean, that was, I
Kevin,
mean, so
it's
vivid. It was so,
so crazy. You remember that? That was my last flight ever. I never flew after that
what?
night. No, that was the Wolf Moon in I would say I think it was 2010. I think it was 2010, January of 2010 or 11. But it was the last flight I ever did, taking you up, and it was so bright, so brilliant
It
that you
was
could see
so
the
bright.
shadow of the plane on the ground in the middle of the night, because it was so bright. Yeah, and we're like 3,000 feet up. You could still see our shadow. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny. I didn't know. I just remember that night. I forgot who was there, but
I
yeah,
mean, and looking over Lake Superior, it was like
yeah.
when Hiccup is riding Toothless up
Full
over the
circle,
Viking Ocean.
full circle, man.
Oh my gosh,
No,
I'm gonna keep picking your brain because I mean, God wasn't done with you yet. I mean, from there, after that all went down, I mean, all of the trials and tribulations of getting into med school, and then the med school that you guys end up choosing is 4,000 miles away on an
yeah,
island in the Caribbean that
yeah,
nobody has heard of, that everybody thinks you're just saying Dominican Republic wrong.
yeah. I know all of them. Yeah, I know that was weird too. That was, and it's good we're talking about this because it kind of bolsters my faith. Because like, yeah, we were in Duluth from 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11. She's applying for med school in 2010 and didn't get accepted. And she was wanting to get accepted to this med school in Israel. And the first full year, you learn Hebrew. So second year, you're teaching in Hebrew and you're doing rounds in Hebrew. And it's in Israel and so cool, whatever. That was the goal. And she applied the first year, didn't get in. We had a whole year of just waiting. She was a CNA and I was a youth minister. And in the meantime, I had started speaking, just getting after theology of the body training. People just started to ask me will you come and do a training? And so then that kind of grew. And so I was speaking a little more and more. And she got accepted. She had a fine MCAT score, but she got accepted to, I think, one place, maybe two. And this one was on this little island called Dominica in the Caribbean, Ross University. We never even nobody's heard of Dominica, nobody. And it's not even on some maps. Sometimes it's so small. And we started telling people, well, she got accepted there. I guess that's where we're going to go. And for me, I was like, well, I have to quit my income, but B, like a youth pastor, a youth minister, I get to be in the ministry, and I have to leave that. And then now I have this like burgeoning speaking career or something, not career, but speaking more and more. And I have to leave all that behind. That was like, it was weird to have to do that. But again, I think in the moment it was like, well, what else do you do though? If God pushes you in this, like, what do you just say no? Do you say, well, I'm going to keep this job? Like it was pretty clear. Like we just go. So I quit, we left. A few people from St. Ben's in Duluth, supported me as a missionary on the island. You got to come down on mission trips and stuff like, so I did that, but it was the craziest. Again, it was so, I'm an idiot and God is just who God is. We get to the island in the middle of the week and we go to mass first Sunday, and it's all the Dominicans and then just these two Minnesotans at mass. And we're sitting by each other, and heavy accents, it's still English, but heavy accents, and Caribbean music was fun, but we didn't understand everything being said. And mass gets over and they're doing announcements, and I'm sitting next to Jason, and the Deacon Knight comes up, and he says, we we really need people to help us get our youth program on the ground and get it started, our youth program. And Jason kind of elbows me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's cool. And then he says, and we also, because of the earthquake, we would really like to do some building projects, and we're going to need help with. And I had talked about that as missionary work. And so Jason elbows me again. I'm like, okay, I know. And then he says, and also we really want to begin to push in the diocese the teaching of John Paul II on marriage and the family. And she's like, like I almost like peed my pants.
All
He
three
said
things.
3 in a row. And I was like, holy crap. Like, what? So after I walked, like, everybody says hi to the priest. We walked out of mass. And you met Father Sharpless when you were there. Like we walk out and I was like, "Hey, Father, you don't know me. We're brand new this week. But I heard the announcements, on the island or in the States, I formed a youth program and I want to lead mission trips and I'm trained in theology of the body." And he said, "You're hired. We can't pay you, but you're hired." And so like for the 2 years we were there, I had a radio program on the island for theology of the body. We 4 separate mission trips, and you came down on the best one, obviously the best one, and did a ton of work like on the island the entire time. Which again, but we didn't know any of that beforehand. Like we just had to go to this island and take that as God's leading. That the only school, I think there was one other one, but the school that she felt tugged toward was the one. And then the first Sunday we're there, everything that he had been training me for, God had been putting in my life, I got to use the whole time on the island. It was just, we hired a van taxi, and I had like 5 spouses of med students during Lent, 2 of whom were atheists. We went on a silent retreat for a day in this van and drove around the island to different churches. And then I would take them through prayer and stuff like that. And these are, it's craziest things got to happen because of this. So again, like, yeah, crazy, unexpected, and like had to take that leap, which feels a lot like right now. So yeah, anyway, yeah.
All you had to do was be open and be willing to keep moving one step forward and look at all of that happened that you could not have possibly
Yeah.
imagined or planned for.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you couldn't have done it.
A smart person couldn't have done it, let alone me. Like orchestrate something like that. Like on the first day we're there, like all the things, the only things I can do are the things that I can do. So,
And you would have never met your kids.
well, and that's the other thing. Like, so I was looking back the other day. I'm like, if we hadn't gone to a Caribbean med school, we wouldn't have all of this debt, like we would be in a different situation. But you can't second guess it, because if we hadn't gone there, we never would have met the kids. We wouldn't have gotten to it. We were on the island late August, and it had to have been late September or early October. Separately, Jason and I, in our separate prayer times, started to feel like it was the time to adopt. And you're like, no, it's not, because med school, you like hemorrhage money. Like it's not the time to take on children. We had been married 10 years without any kids. We were infertile, past tense. We were infertile. And like, we just like, we thought, but Jason brought it up. She's like, it's the craziest thing. I kind of feel like we're supposed to at least look into adoption. And I'm like, I don't want to admit it, but yeah, me too. Like this, not that this is the best time or place. And I don't remember where I talked about this recently, but Jacelyn, she had it was the first full semester of med school. We were in this little apartment called Green Homes, itty bitty, just 1 bedroom, little half shower. And after that first semester, she's like, we got to get a house. And I'm like, we don't need a house. We don't have anything but us. Well, when the kids come and the adoption and stuff. And I remember thinking, like, what are you talking? Like, I put the word out 2 months in. I put the word out to all my local friends on the island, just saying, hey, we're interested in adoption. If you know of anybody, any cases that warrant adoption, please let me know. And I didn't hear anything for 7 months. So it's like November. Yeah.
So
In
she's
November.
just having,
And Jacelyn's like, yeah, it'll happen. And so we started renting a house. It was a 1-level house. So it was a couple of bedrooms. And then we're into the semester. And on June 4th, well, that one day I walk into a coffee shop, just a little shack. This lady D, she made coffee for the med students. I walked in, I had dengue fever, so I hadn't been in weeks. I walked in and she said, where have you been? I have kids for you. And I was like, what? That sounds so sketchy. But 2 days later, I met Davey. Like we got in a taxi van and we went up the mountain into this little village and walked up and met our son. And then it followed, and then we had even that though, like, I'm sorry. Well, whatever. I'm just rambling. So we met the 2 boys. We met the baby, then the son. Even that, the mom initially only was willing to give up the baby, even though like the situation was horrible. She wouldn't explain why she wouldn't give up the older son, who's Christian, our 15-year-old. But so I contacted our friend Megan, who was in this convent at the time, and said, will you just get all the sisters praying? And we told our friends and family, and it was like 10 days after asking the sisters and everybody to pray, my phone rings and it's the birth mom, and she's like, is it too late? And I said, is what too late? And she was, for the older boy, is it too late to give him for I was like, no, it's great. And he moved in like immediately. And yeah, so crazy. And all because we left the home and everything and all the comfort and went down to Dominica, I guess, for med school. And then this is the blessing. We got 3 kids out of the deal. So.
It's so incredible because Providence has guided and led you to in so many big ways. And I think for many people, it is in proportion to your openness and your willingness. But are there, for many people, they might not, see those types of examples in their life, though everybody has the capacity. Are there, are there smaller times, times where you just noticed being generous or being able to abandon yourself to divine providence have shown up and like caused you to, you know, just
Yeah.
recalibrate?
Yeah. Um, Well, and I don't know if I've said this on one of our episodes on here, but if anybody's heard me speak, like I always talk about when we lived on when we were in China, even when you went out in public at any of the tourist sites, it was like beggar alley. There were just always people asking, and it was easy, even as a missionary, to be like, no, I can't. You don't understand. Like I live on a very thin line of support from the States, and so I can't just give stuff away. But some of our friends who were there, working as teachers and stuff, they had a policy when they would go out, they would, before they went out, they would load their pockets full of like the smallest bill they had, like, and they would just, everywhere they went, they would just give it and 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 give it. In fact, I think our marriage was saved because of one couple who saw us in need and paid for us to have airfare to Thailand to get some counseling and stuff. And like, so all we saw was generosity. So Jason and I, when we lived on the island, especially, I started to form just this policy. You just always give the big bill. Like, so always give the biggest bill you have. If you encounter somebody and they ask for money, or you see a need on the internet and they ask for money, then you give the biggest bill you have in your wallet. And that worked out fine on the island. We were using student loan money, and it was also like I was supported as a missionary. And so it seemed natural. And people really learned that I was doing that. Like people would wait for me along the route to school. And for the most part, unless I was being like a grumpy jerk, then we did that. So we get to New York, though. We had to go to New York City for 1 year for Jason to do some rotations. And we live in this little like postage stamp sized apartment in Far Rockaway in Queens. And Jason had to take, sometimes she took the bus/train/bus for an hour and 45 minutes to get to her rotation or whatever. And while we were there, we just had no money. I wasn't doing any speaking, very, very, very little speaking. And Jason and our friend Whitney stayed with us for a while, and she offered to watch the kids one night. And so Jason and I could have a date night. And we, and I don't know if this is a good example of it, but we had a date night, and we got on the train, and it's an hour and 15 minutes into Manhattan. And we're going to go into Manhattan and have like an Italian dinner together in the greatest city in the world. And so we're on the train, and we're sitting there, and she's got her legs up on mine, and we're talking just, I love you, and I'm so tired. And we see this guy walking through the train who's asking for money. And he's coming toward us, and it just hit me, like in my wallet, no lie, like in my wallet, I had $40. I had a 20 and a 20. And I was like, no, like just one night. Like, could you just have one night where I didn't, like, I could have a night off where I didn't have to. And the guy came over and was like, excuse me, sir, I have a disability. I've been out of work for 6 years. Could you spare some change? I was like, yep. So like I took my wallet out, and that's all I had. And it was weird because I was just like strongly convicted, because I had spoken so often to people about giving the big bill, and I'd written about it, and so it wasn't like a deeply spiritual moment. It was just like, are you going to like flat out lie? Are you going to be like a total douche. Like, or are you just going to do what you say you'll do? You're telling everybody else to do it. So shut up and just do it. So yeah, sure. I opened my wallet and I took out like half of our dinner, like, which in Manhattan, that's like a breadstick. Like I was like, dude, son of a biscuit. Like there was no holiness inside, but I crumpled it up and I put it in his cup so he wouldn't see it. And he left. I folded my wallet and we went back to talking and I love you. I love you. I'm so tired. And he walks away. And as far as I know, Jacelyn knew what had just happened. She knew we had no money and she knew that she knew what we had for date night. And so then the guy, at one point I'm talking and I'm looking at her and I see her and her eyes go behind me and up and I hear the jingle of this cup and I'm like, he's back for the other 20, son of a biscuit. Like we're just going to ride the train and go home. And I look up and I was like, can I help you? And it's quiet. Like I'm aware of people on the train watching and he's standing there and he just says, I just wanted to come back and say, thank you. Nobody does that. What you did, nobody does that. And I want to say thank you. And I want to say, God bless you. And he started to tear up. And I was like, no, it's okay, man. Don't worry about it. It's no problem. Like, don't cause a scene. But like, it was like this moment where like you didn't care about the breadstick anymore. Like you just, and we went into the city and we used our $20 up and we got to sit together at a nice restaurant. We got to sit together but like there was this moment where it was like so much more real than anything that I had remembered recently experiencing. That moment where to see, you don't get thanks, not that you need thanks, but to see like, no, I actually impacted, like it did it. So the train saw it, that sort of thing. I don't know. That was probably for me one of the most pivotal moments of saying like, wow. So the harder it is to give, I think it speaks the most power into the situation. It seems like anyway, in our experience. So yeah.
So I
Anyway.
mean, you gave the guy essentially the only money you had for dinner, and still were able to have your date night with your wife
Yeah.
and get reminded that you're more selfish than you wish you were.
Dude, seriously, it was like all in one. It was like it was an all in one thing because it wasn't, looking back and saying, I'm glad I did it. And it was good. But in the moment, like there's no feelings of like pious holiness. It's just like, just ask somebody else. Like, how did you know to ask me? And that was, I think, after the fact, when I've spoken about it, it's, if you view it that way, things change. If you view everything that God puts in your wallet or your bank account or in your life, if you view it as God saying, okay, look, guys, like Michael, Gabriel, come here. I'm going to give this to Nick and he's going to give it to Bill on this train. Just watch. It's crazy. I'm going to put Bill on the train. I'm going to put Nick on the train. I'm going to give him a 20 and I'm going to get that 20 to him through Nick. If you look at it that way, like things kind of change, like the whole paradigm shifts to like, holy cow, everything I have then was given to me in order to bless somebody else or to give to somebody else, then everything changes. And I think that was the most, even that's a small amount, $20. That was, I think, one of the biggest times just for me personally, where I was like, holy cow, like we're like messengers. That's what we are. Or couriers.
Wow.
We're USPS or something, UPS.
It seems like God continually stretches us throughout our lives and, puts us in a situation or gives us an opportunity to reach out more or to sacrifice more or give more. Did you speak about that night on the train when you were doing all your talks? You're doing like what, 10 talks a month, 15 talks a month. You moved away from New York eventually. Did you speak about that night at all? And did it ever come back around?
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. Like that became like some of the, like I started getting asked, I don't remember when it started, but I started to get asked to speak about living on Providence or living on trust. I think I would often call it like an idiot's guide to trust or something like that. But like I got, many times. And that was like it's weird because that is a small moment. Every train has a beggar in New York. And that's just it's a piffle moment for all of humanity, but me and Jacelyn on that train. And then that guy, but it became like sort of a pivot point in a lot of the talks I give, because that's easy enough to understand. Is just give the 20 away. Like, it's a $20 bill, give it away. It did come back. It came back in a lot of talks. But it amplified even in my life while we were in. So we moved from New York to St. Cloud, Minnesota. We were there for 3 years for Jason's residency. And while we were there, again, you're in residency, and I had somebody say, wow, your wife makes less than most youth ministers I know in her residency, even though she's a doctor now. Like, you, as a resident, you just don't make much. And so we, just to get through, I was speaking a lot, and God was opening those doors. But there were times when we were down. I remember one time we were down to, I talked about this the other day on a podcast somewhere, Emily Leadham on her podcast, but we were down to $100, and I was looking online at all of the bills we had, and they were so drastically much more than $100. And I remember, like, I would go, and I'm sure everybody does, or I guess I'm not sure. I'm assuming a lot of people do this, where when you're stressed about bills, like, you go to your online banking like many times a day, or to your phone, on your phone, and I was doing it. Like, I was maybe like 10 times a day, just looking like, okay, this is what we owe. This is the $100. This is what we owe. This is $100. And that's what we had, $100 even. And I didn't tell Jason this till, I don't know if she even remembers that it happened. She didn't know what happened in the moment, but I just got so, like, pissed at the frustration and the situation, that I was like, I wasn't at peace. There was no joy. I was like grumpy to my family, and all because of this stupid $100 in our Wells Fargo account. So in frustration, like, I got in the car and I went to an ATM, and I just took the 100 out and I gave it to the guy on the corner. I was just like, screw it. Because I was like, this $100 isn't going to help anyway. I've looked at it 1,000 times. This $100 is not going to pay off anything. But yet, like, I'm killing myself over this $100. So F it, it's gone. And so I emptied it, like, just handed it off. And that guy never knew what, hit him. But for me, and Emily asked the other day, so what happened? Like, I don't remember. I mean, I'm here, so obviously something worked out. Like, I mean,
Somehow the bills got paid.
yeah. I mean, one of the gigs gave an extra bunch in one of my checks, or what, I don't know. Like, it just worked out. But it took, for me personally, I had to just kill that. I had to shoot that, like, right in the head, right in the crosshairs, and just move on from that $100, because it wasn't going to help anyway. And then God did. So yeah. That concept has come back a bunch in our lives, I would say.
Would you say that, living on God's providence is something that is a strength for the two of you? You've met so many people and talked to so many people. Would you say that that's a grace that He's given the two of you in a unique way? Because I don't see that often, or I don't hear stories like that often. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't hear stories like that a lot, but also I don't know that people talk about it a lot. It's funny. It's a good question. I would say, on one hand, I'll bet there are a lot more people who, if they paused and looked back at their life, they would realize, holy cow, He's brought me every step of the way. I'm still here, and I've been on these cliffs or ledges so many times. Also, though, it's been growing in me in the last few years. I hope that, it has seemed like every time there's a little cliff to jump off, it's a little higher. So the impact seems like it's a little scarier, when you're cliff diving or whatever, like in Leicester River. It seems like every single time is yet another, even with the adoptions, we didn't have any money. And God puts kids in your life. It's like, okay, are you going to say yes or no? Are you going to say yes or no? Well, but we don't have any money in the Wells Fargo. Okay, do you serve Wells Fargo or me? What are you going to say, yes or no? And so I think what I hope is that, even if it isn't as common to hear stories like that, I would hope that through watching an idiot do it, like that girl did in Florida, that it would bring people closer to God. Because in every one of these situations, it's never like to our credit. Like, if you really look into the situation, it's never to like, wow, what a holy person. It's just so clearly that God is doing something. So I don't know if it's that common, but the hope of that it would become common, or it would become more common based on our experiences, like based on things that we've experienced. Maybe people could feel like it could be real in their life. I don't know if that makes sense as an answer, but
Yeah, I think it does. And it makes me think about just being more mindful of what's going on around. My grandpa always kept this little card in his wallet that he had written on, and it just said, maximize your contribution to others. And he always looked at it. It was in his wallet, and
Really?
maximize your contribution to others. And he just had it with him for years and years and years and years and years, decades, as a reminder that, when he was opening his wallet, there it was. Um,
I'm
as a
gonna have to.
reminder to be detached from his money that he didn't get to take with him when he died. All of that got split up between his
That's
kids
insane.
anyway. Um,
That's
and
crazy.
and then for you guys, it's like God's like, all right, enough of you in this phase. I'm ready for you to start living on my providence again. So your wife's going to take a huge pay cut, and for the last 6 months, you're going to have felt discontent with where you're at, so that you're ready to move on where I send you, which could be who knows where.
I know it seems like that has kind of settled. It's weird how quickly, I mean, how you can forget the past so quickly. You can forget all the good, like all the good that like the miracle moments that brought you to wherever you are listening, like, Kevin, and I know some of your story. Like everything that brought you there, you can forget it like on a daily basis. You can forget every day anew what brought you to that moment. And I think these last couple of weeks have done that for us. Have just reminded us like you like we've lived so many like moments that we couldn't have orchestrated, and now we're just in another one. And I was thinking the other day, it feels like when like if God wants you to do a trust fall, or like a leap of faith, and you jump, but like it's that moment that if you slow down in high def, it's where the toes haven't left the ground yet. Like we haven't jumped because there's nowhere to jump yet. I think that's where we're at. It's funny because like when she signed on to this job, she got a signing bonus, which was big, and we used most of it to go to Kenya for a month as missionaries. Like we were there and had these stinking amazing experiences in Kenya for this month that we were there. Um, and then got back to the States and we're like, we don't have any money. Like, we used it all in Kenya. Like, and we're kind of at that point again where we're like, okay, okay, all right, what's going on? Like, and I know the thing is, I don't want to like make too much of the issue because I know that um, the world was affected by COVID and the shutdown, and like the so many people this year are struggling financially that weren't a year ago, or just over a year ago. So it's not unique, but when you're in it, it feels unique to you. And I think that's where we're at. We're just like, okay, are we going back to Kenya? Like, is that what it was? Like the last mission thing we knew was Kenya, and it was amazing. Jacelyn sat in a field doing exams, health checkups and stuff for like 9 or 10 hours. She got her first payment as a doctor because she hadn't started her practice yet here. Her first payment for being a doctor was 6 eggs in a little plastic bag in a field in Kenya. And I'm like, we have a picture of it. And I can't put pictures in the description because I tried tonight and you can't get them in there. But somehow we can post a picture. Maybe we can do it at the end. At the end, after the credits, we'll put a picture of Jason has this bag of eggs and she's smiling. And that was at the same time that our son had gotten typhoid fever and was in a hospital. She was there, like still, I don't know. It's just, so we're like, maybe we'll go back to Kenya. We've been talking to the people in Kenya and maybe we'll head back there. We don't know yet because right now we have a mountain of financial debt that God has to take care of. So we don't know where, but that's where we're headed somewhere, I guess. But aren't we all? I don't know.
Aren't we all?
I don't
Oh
know.
man, well said.
Kind of rambling. I don't know.
No, I think it's good to just be able to process that. And because of the fact that we forget our past so quickly, it's good to be reminded of where you've come from. And for me, it's edifying because, I was there for some of those things, and
Yeah.
just be able
Yeah.
to to just ponder again on the way that divine providence has played on your life. It helps me because it's not a strength. Like abandonment to divine providence is not a strength that I possess.
For
Oh,
any of us, I think. Like,
yeah. you get thrust into it, and you either handle it or you don't, and you either go with it or fight against it. So
Yeah.
whatever's going on right now, just don't fight against it, I would say. So
Yeah. No, amen to that. Like,
yeah.
I think you used the word abandonment. Like, I think that term I was encountered for the first time in becoming Catholic, like how, like a lot of the like mystics and stuff would talk about just a pure abandonment. Like that was a new idea of just like full on kidness. We were talking to the kids the other day about Evangeline. She's just over 1. And we're talking about, guys, we might be moving soon. And I know that's scary as kids. You're all different ages. But God asks us to be like Evangeline. Has Evangeline ever worried about a meal? Ever? No. Has she worried about, she doesn't know what the heck is going on in any moment of her life. She's so dumb. And the kids were laughing and we're like, yeah, no, a 1-year-old is so dumb. But God asks us to come like children, to be, unless you have the faith of a child, then so like that was really illustrative to us to be like, oh, we're supposed to be stupid. All right. Like, I get it. Okay. We just are supposed to like, not stupid, but blindly trust, not blindly. Anyway, people pick apart things, but you're supposed to trust God like Evangeline trusts her parents. And that's hard for everybody because you want to be a grown up with grown up shoes and like do it yourself and stuff. So, yeah.
It's that old clockmaker. Ah, yes, but he's got the faith of a child.
Oh my gosh. You brought it back to the best movie of all time.
Yeah. Well,
Oh
again,
gosh.
I'm going to propose a toast to all of us who are trying to live more on the providence of God, and for you and your family that you can find this next leg of the journey and get on it. Cheers.
Cheers.